Yeah. Oof, it's cold.
I'm gonna try that, see if that works any better. Maybe I had too many things open there. I'm not really sure.
Can you hear us okay?
You're sounding good, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hearing you guys. It's just getting chopped up coming through on my end. So
Okay.
maybe I can learn to read lips real quick or something.
Maybe we need to find somebody who can sign for us for our meetings.
I can't hear you, Barbara.
Oh, sorry.
Greg, do you have it set so that I can share my screen?
Well, I'm gonna wing it, see what happens, see if it clears up.
Okay.
Um,
How are we doing with letting people in? Because it's 7:01. Everybody in?
We have a few more coming in now.
114? Oh, that's.
All right, I think we can get started.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:02. The Central Berkshire Regional School District will be meeting via Zoom. And this meeting will be audio recorded. Would you all please stand for the pledge? And I can't find my flag, but we'll pretend.
Yes.
I pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Which it
for
stands.
which it stands, one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, let's have, Leslie, could you do roll call for us, please?
Yes. Mr. Alpert,
Here.
Mr. Bartels,
Here.
Mr. Case,
Here.
Mr. DeFazio,
Here.
Ms. DiTomaso,
Here.
Dr. Eberwein,
here.
Mr. Emerson,
Here.
Dr. Jelinas,
Here.
Mr. Locatell,
Here.
Ms. Lazari,
Here.
Ms. Lounsbury,
Here.
Mr. Peters,
Here.
Mr. Stewart,
Here.
Mrs. Tucker,
Here.
Dr. Kraft-Reese.
Here, thank you. I'm validating the agenda. And before we open it up to responses from the audience, I just want to remind you that we have a certain amount of time set aside. We have 30 minutes set aside. And just if you are speaking, please state your name, and all comments need to be from you and not read from somebody else's work. And also, this is your time in the audience to speak. During the course of the meeting, only school committee members can speak or ask questions. So this is your time to do so now. I know that Mr. Murphy and Mr. Patton had asked if they could speak. So I'm opening it up now. Mr. Patton, Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, I can't undo my camera, I guess, but do you want me to just read? Oh, okay, there you go. Okay, thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'm Brian Patton, Social Studies at Wacona. So yeah, as we look forward to getting in person again and seeing kids again and maybe getting sports back again eventually, the numbers that were talked about last night certainly give a sign for hope. And you know, I'm looking forward to that. But an objective view at some of key data points just simply suggests that we're not there quite yet. You know, it's hopeful, but as of today's 5 o'clock release, Dalton was in the red and Pittsfield was in the yellow at 4.9%. I don't know if it's because I'm a former building rep or just an older guy with thinning hair who's been teaching for a while, but I've been getting a lot of questions from some of my colleagues about specifically the MOA, the Memorandum of Understanding, signed by the association and the district and updated in December. And Laura Miller, from what I understand, can't speak tonight, so I figured I would take this opportunity just to raise this point. The MOU signed by the association states that a return, I just want to make sure I get it right, return to phase 3 hybrid would be up to the superintendent and the chair, and that in addition to consulting with local health officials, they would take into consideration a yellow or red rating in any of the towns plus Pittsfield, and an average combined positivity rate of 3% in our towns. In case you have it in front of you, I'm quoting from item 3C. Despite these hopeful projections from health officials, I've had several people ask me how we can go back right at this moment when we still have yellow and red towns and a positivity rate above 3%. Optimism and hope, it's great, and we can debate this on Zoom, but ultimately it's like sort of my students and my colleagues and I that have to feel safe among 200 plus people all day. So I just hope the school committee can address this tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Was there anybody else who would like to speak?
Yes, Dr. Kraft-Reese, I would. It's John Murphy.
Hi, John.
Hello. Thank you for the time. I'll be brief. I just have a couple of points to make. I wanted to really briefly clarify a couple of things to do with the survey that teachers took last week. Okay, and just kind of the raw numbers are these. This is for the whole district. 70%, oh, there I am. 70% of the staff that responded were expressed fear about returning on February 1st. Okay, 25 members, and I don't know who they are. I am not one of them, but 25 members use language around possibly taking a leave if we go back. What was mentioned last night is definitely true. Virtually 100% of us teachers would feel better if there were a vaccine. I will editorialize that is a ways off. If you've been following Dr. Baker, not Dr. Baker, I'm sorry, Governor Baker, Freudian slip, has to put it mildly, deprioritized teachers getting vaccines. We've been moved down the list a bit. So that's a ways off. And of course, anyone would feel better if that were the case. So that's the survey. I just want to address the recommendation that I'm certain is going to be made later. I'm certain of that because I did attend the subcommittee meeting last night. I want to echo a couple of the things that my colleague, Mr. Patton, said. There was a lot of hopeful language. There was a lot of really good intentions, okay? But I need to point out that human nature being what it is, right? We all want the same thing. I've mentioned this before. We all would like to be back. I'd like to have my kids, all of that stuff. I don't really even feel like that needs to be said, but I want to make my position clear that I'm not lobbying against having kids back in the school. It's what my job is, and it's why I like my job, are the kids. But the fact is that yesterday, a lot of your recommendation, as I recall, was based on hope and predictions and the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? A hypothesis that the numbers would get better, and that was why everyone expressed these good feelings about going back. As far as I know, and I know I will be corrected by experts if I'm wrong, those numbers have not changed, and my understanding is that there are a couple of more cases in Dalton today, and 3 actually, and a couple in Hinsdale. That's my understanding. Okay, it's well-intentioned. Human nature dictates that after a year like we've had, that we want things to work out well. Of course we do. Of course I do. Okay, but I think currently the facts speak otherwise. That's just my feeling on that. And I also think this desperation, this hope that we all have to get back to the jobs that we love, okay, and the kids that we love. kind of brings up this other element of human nature, is that we feel like we have control over the situation. And if we kind of wish hard enough and all think the same way, that the situation will turn into what we need it to be. And that would be wonderful if that were the case. But I don't think a decision of this magnitude should be made based, at least in part, on emotions and what we would like to see happen. That's all I have. I thank you for the time. I spoke longer than I would have liked. I will yield the floor. Thank you very much, Dr. Kraft-Reese, for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak?
Yes, Jesse has their hand raised.
Jesse. I don't see it.
Anthony Gamble.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes. We can
Okay.
hear.
I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Kittredge. And up front, the teachers have been doing a wonderful job given what they've had this year. And I'd like to say thank you for everything that they've done for the kids. Also, I have seen, I did the results today also, and I still see that Dalton is in the yellow, or excuse me, in the red, with 33 positive cases as of today. And when we originally closed the schools, when Dalton went yellow, I think in the email, it stated that we were not going to reopen until Dalton came out of the yellow zone back to the gray. I would love to have my kid back in school. I think it's the best for any of these children. But at this time, with what's going on, I feel that it's not safe, especially if, I mean, we'd all hate it if one of these kids was a carrier and brought it back to the families, and then it would start all over again at this point. And when they do if they do phase it back in, it might be worth trying maybe K1 and 2 to begin with. I see Pittsfield is going to try K1 and 2, and then, or they're going, let me see here, Voc next week, then they're going to do K1 and 2, and then after the break, they're going to bring more kids back possibly. My whole feeling is we've got 10 days left of schooling before the February vacation. To me, I'd like to see them just left out for those 10 days, because really they're only going for 2 days a week. So that's really only 4 days that would be in the schooling at school. I would just like to see it left right out till after February vacation. I guess that's all I would say. And thank you for everyone for doing what they're doing.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
There's Nick, I see, with his hand up.
Yes, hi everyone. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, my name is Nick Astori, and I'm a senior captain for the men's basketball team at Wacona. And I think that it's definitely obvious that this has limited us all to so little, and we've definitely lost a lot. And we've now been ready a few times to go back, and having that hope and that feeling consistently tugged at away from us on top of everything we've already lost, it's so draining to us. And now that we've been able to see that we can return to sports and some other activities, thanks to all the work and the endless effort from our athletic director, Mr. Shannon, and all our coaching staff and everything, and to do this safely, it's definitely showing us that with this same effort, I think we can return to school in a way that was safe for us all. I've also spent a lot of time talking with a lot of my peers and my teammates and my friends, and it's been made very evident to me that a lot of people are definitely struggling with a remote setting, and a lot of these kids, at least in the world of sports, it's been shown that the best time of their day is that 1 to 2 hours where they get to safely interact with their friends, and I think that it's not necessary for that opportunity to be presented to all students at Wacona. I think that returning back will give us that, and I think that, as I said, as we've seen, with this effort that's been put forth, I think it's definitely possible to return in a safe way. So that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Yes, Emma Belcher would like to speak.
Okay. Emma?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Emma Belcher. I am a sophomore at Wacona, and I think that we definitely should be going back hybrid. And I've noticed throughout the remote experience that my mindset has changed a lot, and my mental health has kind of been struggling just a little bit. And I think that's mainly because we have school for only 2 to like 4 hours maybe, and then we have to kind of sit around for a little bit and then wait to play basketball. And I personally think that being able to go back and get that experience of seeing other students and peers more than just at basketball will give everybody the kind of boost that they've been needing. Because talking to many different people, I've seen grades drop, I've seen their skills to be able to talk to other people just kind of get lost throughout this experience. And I've seen a lot of kids start to become unmotivated and just kind of sitting around, not really doing much, and kind of losing their experience to be able to get up and move around and see different people in a safe environment. And basketball has been giving us that release for a little bit. It's a very safe environment that we've been able to do. And we've been following protocol, and precautions have been taken. And I really think that just getting back will give kids the experience that they've been needing ever since remote started. So
Thank you very much, Emma. There's a Brenda with her hand up.
Anthony?
Hi, this is Brenda Carpenter. I have 2 kids at Kittredge Elementary, and I just want to echo, I think it was Jesse, that Kittredge is doing, I can't only speak for the other schools, but Kittredge is doing an outstanding job with the students. My kids are in 2nd and 5th grade, and my 2nd grader was pretty independent in the fall, and he has deteriorated tremendously since remote. I literally have to sit next to him through the entire school day. 2nd grade students, I listen to the whole class. It's quite entertaining, and I feel really bad for Mrs. Bondini. They're really struggling. The parents are struggling. The kids are struggling. They just want to be back in school. I say we take this opportunity of the next 2 weeks, 4 days, to start that transition and see how that works. I totally get the fear, but I still have to go into my job every day. My husband has to go into his job. This is scary. I get it. But I think we also have an obligation that our kids have been out of the school setting way too long. Mental health is not good with these kids. The stress on the families is not good. And I feel like if we don't start now, we're not going to start. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. Are there other people out there who would like to speak from the audience? No, okay.
Anthony? Anthony would like to speak.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Anthony.
How are you?
Good, I think. How are you?
Good. Good evening. I'm Anthony Gambaroni. I live on 116 Pleasant View Drive. I'm the father of 2 Central Berkshire students. And I wish to express my strong support in return to hybrid learning February 1st. Your Safety and Wellness Subcommittee met to examine a variety of resources in order to inform their recommendations regarding a return to hybrid learning on February 1st. At this meeting, confidence was expressed that they were seeing a downward trend in the number of local cases. The superintendent, Leslie Blake Davis, anticipates this trend will continue and is confident that we are moving in the right direction for a February 1 return date. There is a reason for this confidence. We are fortunate to live in Berkshire County. In fact, Berkshire, Hampshire, and Franklin counties continue to report the lowest rate of infection in the state. Berkshire Medical Center is reporting diminishing number of COVID patients. Cases seem to have peaked in the county. Healthcare workers, first responders, elderly care patients have already been vaccinated. Next week, we enter phase 2, when K through 12 teachers, among others, will be vaccinated. The Safety and Wellness Subcommittee findings are supported by a number of other agencies. the CDC, under both the previous and present federal administrations, said it is critically important for our public health that schools open because COVID has disrupted normal ways of life for our children and parents. In addition, the American Academy of Pediatrics favors reopening of schools. I quote them, "New information tells us that opening schools does not significantly increase community transmission of the virus and that children absolutely need to return to in-school learning for their healthy development and well-being." Last and certainly not least, my wife is a veteran teacher in a neighboring district, and she strongly concurs that in-person teaching is far better for students than distant learning. It is not only the academic loss that students will face when not engaged in direct school learning, but also the opportunity to participate in the extracurricular athletic programs offered in our schools. For example, the theater arts and music instructors have done a fantastic job trying to give students some type of fine arts experience, but it is not the same. Other districts have been finding a way to provide athletic experience for their students. Even though the rate of infection is much higher east of us, you only need to read Mass Live or the Boston Globe to see the scores from the winter sports competitions being played throughout the state. I empathize with the pressure that you are encountering. You are dealing with the usual issues facing school district, plus a large building project, and now the worst pandemic in 102 years. But the entire school committee must keep in mind that the district's stated vision is to provide an inclusive educational environment for all learners in order to attain social, emotional, and academic success. In addition, the district's stated mission, in partnership with the community, should provide a rigorous, meaningful learning environment. Please consider a hybrid instructional model on February 1st. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I saw another hand and now it's not there. Anybody else see any hands?
I believe that hand was mine.
Oh, okay. Are you Janet?
Yes.
Hi, Janet.
Hi. My name is Janet Douglas. I am not only a parent, but I am also a paraprofessional at Kittredge Elementary. My son goes to Wacona. 2 days before Christmas, I lost my mother to COVID. I'm sorry. Both me and my son would like to go back to school. Working remote has been hard for me, both as a paraprofessional and as a parent. Making sure he's on school, he's doing what he needs to be doing. To put it blunt, COVID sucks. This is awful. But I am very anxious about going back to school. I have asthma and I have an autoimmune disorder, so I am very susceptible. My son losing his grandmother, who he was very close to, is very anxious about going back. He wants to go back, but has massive anxiety about going back. We all want to go back, but we want to go back when it is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emily has her hand raised.
Emily. Oh, there you are.
Hi, thank you. My name's Emily Boucher. I have two daughters at Craneville Elementary, and just to start, I also feel like Craneville has done just an excellent job accommodating the remote environment to the best, I think, to the best scenario that they can offer. However, you know, I do question, you know, the concern with going back when there's a hybrid model in place, which is supposed to alleviate a lot of risk. I can understand not wanting to go back full time with the full population in school at the same time. But I thought that the hybrid model was really developed and designed to kind of alleviate the highest risk and offer, a safer environment to go back when numbers are, inevitable, but to still keep that risk low. And I feel like there's a lot of other options too for parents and families who are more at risk or more concerned, where there are kind of other remote learning programs out there, but there's no other options for those families who do want their children to go back, and in some cases really need their children to go back for their overall well-being. And I feel like that's what the hybrid model offers some of those other families. So by continuing to not go back, just because there are cases, which I think is a reality that we all have to face, is, restricting only a certain portion of the population from having a choice that best suits their students or their children's needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shannon has her hand raised.
I say Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hello. I'll make this quick, and I kind of want to just repeat what I said yesterday. I am a licensed mental health professional, and I do think that kids being back to school is incredibly important. I think the social aspect of it, having a schedule, just the consistency, and many students that need the support of teachers, my daughter included. I think the kids get more out of being in the classroom. That being said, I do work at the hospital, and yes, the numbers are down. But if you look at that, and you look at the number of the monoclonical therapies that are done in the nursing home, there's a reason the numbers are down. BMC is doing a lot to keep people out of the hospital with the positive rates. It's why the numbers in the hospital are down. If you look at the number of deaths in the hospital, they are up this past week, which scares me. It scares me as somebody, sending my kid to school, which again, I want more than anything. I want her to get back to her sports. I want her to be out there doing what kids should do. But having 5 new positives yesterday, 3 in Dalton and 2 in Hinsdale, we were hopeful that the numbers would come down and put us out of the red category. To send them back for 2 days a week, for 2 weeks before the vacation, I just wonder if now is the time to do that with 4 sessions and then the break, or wait a couple weeks and just see if the numbers truly do come down in the community. I think that was a really good point for the person that made that earlier. The other question I wanted to know for parents that aren't comfortable, is there an option for them for the next couple weeks to see if you do go back fully semi-remote, is there an option for parents that aren't comfortable to allow their kids to have alternative assignments instead of setting them for those 2 weeks to kind of meet in the middle and kind of make everybody happy as you can? But I hear everybody's concern, and I get it, and I get the whole mental health piece of it. But right now, we're the adults that need to make the decisions to keep our kids safe. And I just personally don't feel comfortable enough right now that the numbers have gone consistently down in Dalton or Hinsdale or the Central Berkshire District to put the kids in that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Anybody else?
I don't see anybody else.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the cross-section of people who spoke up tonight. And it really gives us a good picture of how people are feeling. I also want to thank everybody who has sent me an email, and I've responded to each and every one because I value your input and I want you to know that you're valued, and that's why I respond. So thank you. Now we are going to move on to Shane, a report from Shane. I know you're here. I saw you. There you are.
Hi.
Hi.
So our women's basketball team was ranked #1 in Western Massachusetts from Mass Live. Our quiz team had a meet last night. Our Wacona Nordic team has been having some great races so far in their season. And Neff won the Holiday TikTok Challenge hosted by the class of 2023. The class of 2022 extended the deadline for the talent show submissions to February 5th. And I have also been asked by several students to speak about different opinions on going back. I have heard things like how Nick and Emma have said about the social aspects and how a lot of students feel that they're missing out on a lot of things and their mental health and everything like that. They feel like that has been going down. But also to mirror what Miss Douglas brought up, I've also had a lot of students come to me talking about how they have family members with pre-existing medical conditions and things like that, and they're very worried about those family members or even themselves, and they're worried about a lot of things too. So yeah, but so that is what I was asked to say on behalf of my fellow peers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shane. Okay, now we're going to move on to the consent agenda and if anyone desires to remove an item from the consent agenda, please let me know and we'll pull that out for an individual vote.
Barbara, if I may speak,
Yes.
I would like to amend the minutes of the meeting of the 14th. There's one correction under finance I'd like to make.
Okay, could you go ahead?
Sure. So in the minutes of the meeting of the 14th, it indicates that during the finance meeting in January, that one of the items discussed was E&D, and that was not discussed at that meeting. So that's the only change that needs to be made.
Okay, so we'll eliminate the E&D. Thank you very much, Bonnie. So given that amended. The amended.
Barbara?
Yes.
I'd like to, on the roll call vote for the minutes, my vote is recorded incorrectly as yes. That should be recorded as abstention.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Okay, aside from those two changes on the minutes, which we will amend, may I have a motion for the consent agenda, please, to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Thank you. And now we will need a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bartels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Misty Tomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas,
Yes.
Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori,
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes, thank you very much. Now we move on to communications and the report of the chair. And I'm going to ask Bonnie to give us a quick update on the regional agreement. Just keeping in mind that this is just, Bonnie is creating a very small ad hoc committee, and we're meeting just briefly to then include others in our committee. Thank you. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Okay, so our meeting will be on February 3rd at 6 p.m. Our committee members include Mr. Stewart, Mr. Emerson, Dr. Kraft Reese, myself, and Mr. Bartels, which gives us a representation of 5 of the 7 member towns and a mixture of large and small and people, towns that supported the school project and those that didn't. And as Barbara said, our purpose of this meeting is to meet briefly about the process going forward for the consideration of any revision to the regional agreement. So it's should be a relatively short meeting. I have sent out documents to each member so that they can review it before the meeting so that we can make this a very productive meeting.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anybody have a question for Bonnie? Okay, Then the second one is review of the Dorothy Presser presentation. Last meeting, Mr. Stewart asked for some discussion about that, and we thought that we would just have a brief review. I'm hoping that Mr. Stewart's audio is working. Oh, good. Okay, I see an affirmative nod. Yay. And if you could just give us, the committee, a brief summary of what Dorothy Presser's presentation was about, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry, let me, I'm working the audio on my phone and speaking on the computer, so bear with me here. So yeah, we met December 9th with Dorothy Presser, the field director of MASC, for a training. There was the few things that we covered. One of the big ones, I think, is the caution against hitting reply all. What we want to avoid is violating the open meeting law by communicating in a group that would make a quorum or larger. So avoiding the reply all button, we'll do that. We talked about the difference between governance and administration. We talked about, with that, we talked about the superintendent has the one boss, that's us. And the school committee has just one employee, and that's her. There was some talk about the roles of subcommittees, and I think that's where some of the confusion came in that Mr. Locatell had raised at the previous meeting. So I do look forward to more conversation on that. Maybe we can sort that out at a training session amongst ourselves. The other thing that I thought was important was that she had talked about sometimes a roundtable discussion is more beneficial when we're trying to discuss and work out ideas and come up, bounce ideas around back and forth with each other, as opposed to the strict business type meetings. I imagine somewhere there's a hybrid where some topics could benefit from a roundtable type discussion. And for the rest of it, we can just move forward with our simple business meeting. I think that's about it for my report there.
Thanks, Dave. It's my experience that with a committee of 15, it's a little difficult to have roundtable discussions as part of our school committee meeting. It's more often feasible with groups, school committees of 3 and 5, but we can further discuss that. And I thank you very much for sharing that information. And I think from what you've said and from what I've heard, we might want to do a round 2 of Dorothy Presser and get some more information. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and we do have a couple more trainings coming up as well. So perhaps after all those, we can take a look at that again. Thank you, Barbara.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Just a review of the communication guidelines. You know, that we have so many new members. I just wanted to say this out loud, and we will be saying this at our training that's coming up in February, the training that Leslie and I are giving that's different than the chart the course. But this training that we're talking about that's happening in February, we'll talk about the ways in which we can communicate with faculty and staff, and it should be through me or through Leslie, and not individually, because it would just be too cumbersome. So I appreciate that. Okay, subcommittee reports and recommendations. I think we're going to go right to safety and wellness because that's first and foremost on everybody's mind. So let's just, Nicole, if you're ready, let's just dig into it, okay?
Okay. So since our most recent full committee meeting a couple weeks ago, the Safety and Wellness Committee has met twice. We met last Thursday, the 21st, and then again, as many of you know, we met again last night. Both meetings involved a thorough review of the data, including reports from Jane Smith, who is the Dalton Board of Health agent. Dr. Dan Doyle was present last night, although he couldn't make it on the 21st. We received reports from head nurse Kelly Jean Gallagher and our COVID manager, who is Debbie White. Last evening in particular, Dr. Doyle gave us a report, which he mentioned that Berkshire County is on a positive track. Cases are trending down, including Pittsfield and Dalton. Inpatients at BMC are also trending down. Jane Smith gave us a very detailed report. She has been so good to us. She is now, as of past couple of meetings, she's graphing all the data and showing us, graphs that are showing, again, that positive decline in cases. She is very particular to Dalton. I mean, she's employed by Dalton. She was able, for our past meeting last night, to also share some Hinsdale data because they shared that with her. She can look at a lot of the data from the other towns, but she doesn't have the detail she has for our two biggest towns, which are Dalton and Hinsdale. Let's see. We also last night did have a lot of discussion about Dalton being in the red, and even though the cases are dropping, the Dalton might still stay in the red just because of how they capture that data, which it's not all that, they stopped collecting the data a few days before the report, and it goes back for 2 weeks, but we spent a lot of time on that. Kelly Jean, our head nurse, has also started graphing her data, which is really great for us to really see. She's doing once weekly charting, and she's including the number of cases within our district. Now, this is staff and students included, close contacts, and pending tests. I can't read my own writing. She's also looking at people who are symptomatic. She's tracking that. And she showed us the big difference within our school community between the week of January 15th through 21st versus the 22nd through the 27th. And we've had a decrease in all areas. I'm sorry, except pending tests went from 7 to 8. But even close contacts went down from 17 to 6. We heard from Debbie White. She's also, tracking all the same data. She mentioned that we're on a good trajectory with very few cases in the past few weeks. It doesn't mean we haven't had any, but they're very few. And none of the close contacts that were identified from a couple weeks ago came back positive. They were all negative, proving that the mitigation strategies that we have in place are proving to be effective. So the Safety and Wellness Committee will continue to meet weekly to keep on top of the current data and trends. And although our meetings are a formal format to review this data, I just want to let everyone know that Leslie and Debbie are constantly receiving updates and constantly on top of this, not just once a week, that it's a daily thing for them. At this point, I'd like to see if Barbara Kraft-Reese might share some comments and some information that she has.
Sure, thank you very much. So relative to the survey, I wanted to say that we understand and really empathize that there are a lot of very real fears about returning to hybrid. Given the fact that school administrators are maximizing efforts to maintain safe environments, given the fact that we are reinforcing with families to take extra precautions now that the end is almost in sight with vaccines, and given the fact that we're fortunate enough to secure Binex Now to immediately test those students and staff who present symptoms, we feel that all is being done to mitigate the risks. We will continue to monitor the situation with the team of experts, including Dr. Doyle, Jane Smith, and Kelly Jean, along with Debbie White. And I want to really give a shout out to all those people who are at our weekly meetings and really giving us good input. I also wanted to talk about the survey a little bit, if I might. The survey results included 133 members out of 180 members. So that was 74% of CBRSD staff that are members responded to the survey. In question 1 about feeling safe now, 30% of those who responded said that they feel safe now. Question 2, feeling safe after the vaccine. 83% of those who responded said they would feel safe after vaccination. And question 3, considering a leave, 19% responded that they would consider taking a leave. So that was some of the information that we have. And I also wanted to talk to you about the letters that were sent to me, to Leslie, and to Nicole. This time, instead of coming from staff and parents, the predominant group was students. And it was so amazing to read the quality of the persuasive essays that these students wrote. I really, as an educator, I applaud the teaching staff for doing such a wonderful job in helping the students be such great writers. So they were very well written and truly a reflection of the quality education our children are receiving, thanks to the faculty and staff. While they were all meaningful and relevant, we'd like to quote from one. And I think Leslie is going to quote from one of the students who wrote. Leslie, you're muted.
Yep,
Oh,
no,
here
I have a couple, I just wanted to add to that also, Barbara, and just piggyback on with what you're saying is, because I think what you're hearing tonight is that basically in you know, in my role, I need to take so much so many things into consideration when we make these really hard decisions. I take not only, I do look at the Thursday metrics that came out, which come out today. That data is as of this past Saturday. So, but as Barbara alluded to, I also take Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday into consideration as well. I'm in continual communication with Jane Smith, with Dr. Dua as needed, with Kelly Jean, with Debbie, and I'm really grateful that all I have to do is, all I have to do is hit a few buttons on my phone and they're there, or my cell phone. So I take all of that data into consideration. I take any trends and patterns into consideration. I balance the risks because I have to balance the risks of being out of school, as well as the risks of transmission from COVID. I will say that I am proud of the work that we've done as a district to keep everyone safe. I'm proud of the model. It's a cohort model. So, as one of our parents did allude to, that, we have cohorts within cohorts, which means there's a lot less transmission. There's a lot less exposure. Additionally, within those, as part of those models, we also have social distancing, we have mask wearing, we have continual hand hygiene, we have constant monitoring within our schools. Our track record when we had students in schools, we do actually now have students in schools. We have some of our students with more complex needs. We have a total of 48 students across the district that go to school every day. And we have teachers every day that are working with students, and I applaud them. And the nurses as well. But we don't have one case of transmit. When we had our hybrid model, we don't have one case where transmission occurred in our schools as part of that model. So I do want to, I think it's important to take all those things into consideration. I guess my hope is, and I know that these are really, really hard decisions. I know that, I guess my hope is that as we move forward, that we, that everyone really, we move forward with compassion, because there are real fears and anxieties. I know these exist. But I also couldn't ignore, as Barbara just spoke about, I couldn't ignore the multiple emails, or I can't, that appear in my inbox. And overwhelmingly, there were some from students. So what I did basically, and if you're a student and you're listening, I applaud you for using your voice, because one of the things that we've worked really hard on, or that's part of our curriculum this year, is something called civic agency. So for those students that have spoken up and those students that have written these essays, one of the things that you are exercising, and you may not know it, is your civic agency right now. And for that, I am so proud of you. and I'm not going to share names because I don't want to do that. But what I am going to do is just take, and I'm not going to read them all, but I'm going to read just some quotes from some of those, because that's another piece of information that is, these are our students, and it's another piece of information that I take very seriously. So one of our students wrote to us, we as students have had our entire lives dictated by the decisions of adults, most of whom we have never met. The power is once again out of our hands and into yours. We look after one another academically, physically, but most importantly, emotionally. The time we spend together is limited. But if this year has taught me anything, making use of every minute with the people you care about is a lesson we must stop overlooking as a society. Another student wrote, I personally learn better in a classroom environment with hands-on learning. I appreciate having interactions with my fellow peers. I also think in-person learning benefits my emotional well-being. I think that the school has done a great job with the regulations, and I feel safe returning to school. Another student wrote, I believe that for the sake of students' learning and emotional well-being, we should push for in-person school along with extracurricular activities and competitions. We all appreciate the thought and time you take to make all these important decisions, and we just wanted to share our opinions with you and let you know how we would feel about going back to school. I hope you take all this into consideration when making this decision. Thank you and stay safe. So I guess I just thought it was important for everyone to hear the voices of some of our students and how articulate they are and how courageous they were in reaching out and sharing those with me. And I hope you also take into consideration, like I said, that our administrative team, our entire staff, how hard they work and how much they do care about all staff members and how hard they work to make sure that all of our safety precautions are honored and how our community joins with us. So we have, like I said, we have the Board of Health representatives and I have not found any situations where I need to access a community resource and they haven't been supportive of being right there for what I need, giving me the information that I need, giving me the analysis that I need. So we react pretty quickly to our students or to any situations that we're worried about. So I just felt it was important to reiterate that to hear those and to know that I have concerns about keeping our students out of school any longer. I have concerns. I think they miss their teachers. Our teachers are doing a fabulous job. I think they miss some of that in-person time with our teachers. I think they miss each other. I think they miss they are missing the resources that we offer that you can only access in in-person learning. I do feel hopeful about the numbers. Like I said, I look at the numbers. I don't think it looks the same as it did 2 to 3 weeks ago. So I hope all of those things are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. I appreciate it. I hear some feedback. Nicole, do you want to come back and make your recommendation from the Safety and Wellness Committee? You're muted. Oh, okay.
There we go. Sorry about that. But at the end of the meeting, we came forth with a recommendation and we took a vote that we would recommend to the full committee to keep the previously set and agreed upon date of February 1st to return to hybrid. So that being said, I guess, should I make a motion?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'm going to make the following motion. Be it resolved that the CBRSD school committee vote to support the safety and wellness recommendation to keep in place the plan to return to hybrid on February 1st, 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from our school committee? Mike Case, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Reese, and thank you everybody for all the hard work that you've been doing. But I am super involved and super worried about the social and mental well-being of our students. I'm an old man now, but my fondest memories are high school and below. I mean, I can still vividly see my friends. Our children have missed out on at least 11 months of that. And our children, they look at their life in segments, and they are losing an awful lot. I firmly believe our kids need to be back in school. I was watching the news this morning, and I guess there's a parent suing the governor of Wisconsin for her honor student senior son that committed suicide. And she's blaming the governor because he locked down the schools. And as part of that segment, they said the news channel I was watching said that the increase in school-aged suicides is 18% from September. So I'm voting wholeheartedly to get our kids back into school in the hybrid model, which I firmly believe we can do safely as long as the students, the teachers, and the parents enforce the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Anybody else from the school committee?
Yes, I would
Mr.
like to.
Yes.
Thank you, Safety and Wellness. I think you've done a very thorough job, and I was at the meeting last night, and I was impressed by the statistics, and I feel better now than I did a couple of months ago. There's no question that all of us are anxious. All the teachers are anxious. All of those that are seniors are anxious. All the kids are anxious. There's no question about that. And there's not much we can do about that. That's what the pandemic is. But it boils down to a couple of questions. If we go back to school, have we elevated the medical risk to either the teachers or the students? And I think the answer is no. One of the safest places is the school. All of the transmissions are outside of the school. They're very well documented and discussed. So I have no reluctance to go back to school for that reason. The other question is the unintended consequences. And Mike mentioned a number of them. And I've sat with my grandchildren while they've been participating in remote learning. And I see what's happening. The teachers are truly amazing. I could never do that. I have the greatest regard for them. But clearly the students are learning at a much slower pace than they would have if they made contact with their teachers in person. And I've gotten anecdotal evidence from that, from several different school districts. So I know that the kids are falling behind, and I know they could do better if we had some element of in-person learning. So for that reason, I am fully in support of the decision we made a couple of meetings ago. And I think we should continue on that path and go back to hybrid learning on Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Lacatell. Any other comments from our committee? Mr. Stewart?
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes.
I was thinking our previous meeting 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of concern with the teachers, and I feel like we can do it safe. And I voted last time to postpone return to school. I thought that was in the best interest of the teachers, and I really want to support that. And then when you were talking about the survey, you know, part of what was mentioned in the survey was the total case numbers in the state. And at the time that was 14,000, about 14.5, somewhere around there. And I looked at it again today and we're down to about 11.4. And I thought, well, what does that mean for us, right? So that's a total state number of COVID cases in the 0 to 19 age bracket. And that's out of a total of about 58,000 cases in the state. So I started playing around with that and looking at the numbers and seeing what that meant. And that 0 to 19, if you take out the first 3 years, because they're not in our school, that brings it down to 9,700 cases, more or less. And that would represent like the school age population. And in Massachusetts, there's about 450,000 students in Massachusetts. So I took a look at that and I said, well, what would that mean for Central Berkshire? And I worked some math out, and hopefully some math students can check this out for me as well. But I figured if we kept with the averages, that would bring us to about 5 cases in our entire district of 1,500. If you just kind of keep working the math down in that ratio. And we're in Berkshire County. Berkshire County is the 3rd lowest infection rate in the state. So clearly most of the cases are out in the Boston area. They're not really here. I think the counties just east of us are number 1 and 2 for the lowest. So to me, that feels really safe. And when I start looking at some of the information that Leslie has provided in the airflow numbers and the amount of work that they've done to ensure a safe school, I really look at that and I feel like this is something we can do safely. One of the people I look to is Dr. Joseph Allen at the Harvard School of Public Health, the director of Healthy Buildings program. He has a lot of great information. I sent a couple of you a video. Hopefully you had a chance to watch that. He had some really great information there. One of them, if you just look at the mask usage, a 50% cloth mask between 2 people with no mechanical air filters or anything, will get you about 75% efficacy for protection. 2 surgical masks at about 70% efficacy will get you about 91%. So there's a lot of ways to make ourselves safe. I think Leslie's done a great job doing that already. But I really want to stress that there's a lot of ways of making ourselves safe that we don't have to go to the last resort, which is closing schools. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of things that are done already. And I think there's probably some more options that we might be able to look at to really drive this safety message. And I think closing schools should really be an option of last resort. And I don't really think that we're there right now. I support this motion to continue with the moving into hybrid on the 1st. And I think that's where I stand on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Any other discussion?
Barbara, if I may.
Yes, please, Bonnie.
I really struggle with this decision, but one of the things that I keep thinking about is we've had multiple conversations about when an event like the holidays or school vacations come up where there's a potential when we're in a non-school environment, school vacation, Christmas, holidays, where people are back out in the community, and to postpone returning to a hybrid situation in hopes that after the school vacation, things will improve. I understand the concerns of the parents. I understand the concerns of the faculty and also the concerns of the students. And I just don't think it makes sense for us to postpone returning to school in the possibility that after school vacation, things will improve. And part of this is based on the fact that in my role outside of the school committee, I've been very involved recently with the vaccine program. And there are very hopeful signs that the vaccines are going to be continuing. In the next few weeks, it'll go into the second part of phase 2, which hopefully will include the faculty and staff at the schools. So I would again support returning to hybrid.
Thank you, Bonnie. If there is no further discussion by the school committee, I think then we are ready for a vote. Oh, Nicole?
Yeah, I just wanted to put a quick thing in there. I know we've talked about numbers and all, and I had looked at, even though Dalton is still considered in the red, the positivity rate has gone down considerably. So
I thought we're under, they're 2.7. Is that correct? Okay, thank
I
you.
mean, that's just an aside, and I said a lot last night, so I'm gonna.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bargels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Leslie, a yes vote means we want to go back to school on Monday.
yes.
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Ms. DiTomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas,
Yes.
Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori,
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes. Thank you very much. And again, you know, the weight of the world is on us, and we're making decisions, and they're very, very tough. And I can't thank the Safety and Wellness Committee enough for really stepping up and taking the lead in this, especially for a group that was going to disband. So thank you. Okay. Now, Nicole, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No.
Okay. All right. So then we are ready for the Wacona building project. And then we'll go back to the other committees. I'm sorry.
Want to start with the other committees first?
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, I just, nothing much to update. Honestly, we still haven't got the breakdown of the HVAC changes that were out there. They were supposed to be there last week, and we still haven't got them. So as soon as we get those breakdowns, we'll come with recommendations, and we'll have to bring in the school building committee to vote on those. But again, they haven't shown up yet. The project is still moving along fine. We had our first COVID scare last week. It was in the weekly update. I'm thinking most people were able to read that. There was one person that tested positive, and he exposed probably one or two other people in his same contractor company. And we've isolated, and those people are quarantining. Hopefully that won't slow anything down. That's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Okay, going back, curriculum, Mrs. Latazori.
Hi, everybody. Am I coming through clearly right now?
Yes, right now.
So we met this past Tuesday night, and we had a few topics we went over. We touched upon TECA because one of our school committee members had a question on enrollment and how it was going from semester to semester. So we were informed that at the end of the first semester, there were 75 students from the elementary schools and 29 students from the middle school that had ended the semester with TECA. 63 of those students from the elementary school and 26 from the middle school picked up on second semester. So some of those families felt safe enough to come back in and join back in for remote and then for hybrid coming up. And all the bumps and kinks have sort of worked themselves out, and the students who are in TECA have been doing very well with the curriculum. And so I hope that answers the questions that we got on that. We also had a presentation from Cassie Vorch and Helen Vorse and Helen Bloomer, who are looking to open a school for autistic children called the Branches School. They're looking to file their application with the state soon. They're hoping to start with about 12 students to begin with, and hopefully growing up to about maybe 24. They will, and the premise of the school is that they will be there to take the students whose families feel that they need the extra help with their autism, to teach them the skills that they need to then integrate back into their school districts. So it wouldn't be a permanent placement, so to speak. They did come looking to us because they do need approval from 3 districts to within Berkshire County to allow them to open. Now, an approval just means we're okay with them existing in the town of Dalton, not that we're endorsing them or saying that by any means we will advocate our kids to go there. It's just strictly, we think that they are okay to open. But we had a few more questions for them, so we'll be revisiting this issue on our next meeting on February 22nd and bringing it, and they will be coming to our full school committee meeting on February 25th to talk to all of us about this. And then we also got an update on benchmarking from the elementary schools and the middle schools. And it looks that we talked about the Ames Web, which benchmarks math and ELA literacy. And in the elementary schools, as we expected, last year's kindergarten, this year's first grade, there was some slippage in their skills. A lot of kids slipped. There was quite a few kids that slipped from tier 1 into tier 2 and then into tier 3. But for the remainder of the elementary school grades, most kids seem to have held their own from last year to this year. And in some grades and in some subjects actually had made some gains, which was nice to see. And then we also talked about Edgelastics and what that revealed about the middle school and the elementary schools, and that critical thinking skills involving multi-step problems or essay writing. There was some slippage there too as well, which considering no one has been consistently in school for 11 months was expected, and it wasn't as bad as and would have been anticipated. But again, we will be discussing this further at the full school committee meeting with a presentation on the 25th of February, and at our next curriculum subcommittee meeting, which will be on February 22nd at 7 p.m. via Zoom, we will be looking at benchmarking from the high school.
Thank you, Ellen. Any questions for Ellen in curriculum? It was a very robust meeting too, full of good information. Just for the sake of moving this along, how about policy? Mr. DeFazio, I know that I dissed you for safety and wellness last night, and mea culpa, but could you report out?
Yeah, everyone seemed to abandon the policy meeting for some reason. So we met last night. Our first topic was the MASC anti-racism resolution, which we'll be bringing before the full school committee at an upcoming meeting. The consensus was that the resolution was fine the way it was written by MASC, but it's a little bit vague in that it doesn't really ask for much in the way of proof to showing that we're fulfilling the obligations that we're kind of taking on in that resolution. But Debbie White did detail a lot of the steps that the district is taking to work towards being anti-racist. So we kind of see the resolution as a starting point of something that we'll be looking to expand on in the future. One positive that came from that discussion was Debbie offering to have the Equity and Diversity Steering Committee's Policy and Planning Subcommittee look through the district's policy manual, kind of from an equity and diversity perspective, to see if there are any policies that are kind of awkward or very out of date as far as the terminology, things like that. The other thing we did was we took a look at the school committee's use of protocols. This went back to that December training that we did with Dorothy Presser from MASC. And it was one thing that Dave actually didn't mention in his report. So that's good that we're covering it here. Basically using an MASC document that outlined what protocols cover, which are things like who the board represents, how members of the board treat each other, communicate, improve themselves, etc. We determined that our policy manual does cover pretty much all of the protocols. It's just that they're kind of spread out among like a half a dozen of our policies. So because of that, we don't really see a need to create a new policy detailing all of those, but we do think it would be a good idea to put together kind of like a one-page standalone document that maybe the board members, the committee members would get once a year, kind of review just as a refresher on how to behave themselves, basically. So I'm going to be putting something together that I'll be bringing to the next policy subcommittee meeting, and then hopefully we'll have something for the committee shortly thereafter. That's really all I have. We haven't set a date for our next meeting.
Thank you, Rob. Does anybody have any questions for policy and Rob? Okay, appreciate it. So I'm just looking to see personnel. Do you want to go next?
Did you want to do finance?
Sure.
You
go
skipped
ahead.
over finance.
I know I did because I thought you had a big report to give. But
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
I don't think we have a huge report at all. It's only if there's questions. I'll let Bonnie talk if she, I don't think we have a presentation, do we?
Okay, I think you had some things to say. Okay.
Oh, sorry, no, but you can do personnel first. That's fine.
Nope. Bonnie, go ahead.
Okay. So Greg, there is an item here, fiscal 22 budget discussion. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything before
It's really if anybody has any questions. We went over the initial budget last week, or 2 weeks ago at the last meeting. Now you guys have had some time to digest it. We will be coming out with a tentative budget in 2 weeks, and there will be some changes. Just a few off the top, we had the Berkshire Health Group meeting on Monday, and premiums will be held steady next year. So that increase for health insurance, we don't need that huge increase, the 5% which we had in there. I might keep a little increase in there just until we have a better idea on staffing, if we're going to have new staff next year anyways, just to have if new members join the insurances, but definitely not a 5%. And we have seen some retirements come in, so we will see some changes, big changes in the tentative budget. The only other thing I wanted to point out, I did finally finish. We have an online version of the budget book this year. I will be sending out a link tonight. I can share my screen if you want to take a look at it real quick right now. But if you guys over the weekend want to look through it, there's a lot of information. Hold on, I'm just going to share it so you can see. Can you all see the budget book?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the budget book. It starts with the superintendent's letter from Leslie Blake Davis. And then on the left-hand side, it scrolls through all the different areas, which each page has multiple things on it. Historical data, it'll go back, I think I did 10 years. You can click on them to make them bigger. Then there'll be, some have graphs, some have charts. School choice information's in there, revolving accounts is in there, grants. So I'll send this link out to everybody tonight, and I will also put it on the website. If anybody has any questions on how to use the document, or you just have questions in general, send me an email and I'm more than happy to help you. And this will be as more information is shared. So as the tentative budget comes out, I'll also include that. Or if we get more concrete information like for grants or for revolving accounts, I'll continue to add that, and I'll let you know if new stuff gets added.
Thank
so
you.
this takes the place of that humongous book that we got?
Yes. In reality, I would love for this to take the place of the book in general, but I'm more than happy to create a hard copy if anybody would like one.
But if we don't want one, we don't have to have one.
I'm not creating 15, so I'm only going to create a budget book if somebody wants a budget book.
Okay.
The online version is fine. Thank you very much.
But if anybody does like it and they like the hard copy, I'm more than happy to make it.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg. So just to give a synopsis, we have not met since the last meeting. Our next meeting will be the 2nd of February, and we'll be talking about the tentative budget. So more to follow on that.
What time on the 2nd?
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
And that will be via Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready for personnel now, Mr. Locatell.
I would like to go into executive session now. I don't see any reason why we can't go in now, if that's all right with everyone.
Sure.
Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee goes into executive session at 8:21 p.m. in accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy in preparation for negotiations with CBEA and AFSCME bargaining units, for which the chair has declared an executive session is necessary to protect the bargaining position of the committee and to reconvene in open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call vote? I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bartels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Misty Tomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas, Dr. Jelinas,
Yes.
Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori,
Yes.
Miss Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes. So we are in executive session at 8:22. Everybody join the breakout room.
A lot of feedback.
So it looks like we're all back. And Mr. Lacatelle, would you like to make some motions, please?
Yes, I will.
I think we are missing a few people, actually.
Some may have just abandoned us, given up.
We're missing,
Right.
oh, there's Todd Emerson. There he is.
Overdone by.
All right, we're here. Let's do it.
Yep.
Whereas the school committee ratified a memorandum of understanding between the district and the Central Berkshire Education Association. I think this is on December 3rd, 2020, that addresses conditions for reopening. Be it resolved that the school committee ratifies an addendum to that memorandum of understanding to address student learning time as recommended by the Personnel Subcommittee.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bartels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Misty Tomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas,
Yes.
Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori,
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
I'll abstain again.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Mr. Lacatelle.
Whereas the Administrative Assistance Unit of the Central Berkshire Education Association on November 19th, 2020, ratified the settlement agreement between that unit and the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee to be incorporated into a successor contract for the period July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2023. Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee ratifies the settlement agreement between the Administrative Assistance Unit of the Central Berkshire Education Association and the school committee to be incorporated into a successor contract for the period July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2023 as recommended by the committee's bargaining team.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bartels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Misty Tomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas,
Yes.
Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori,
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Lacatelle. Is there anything else that you'd like to report?
No.
Any questions for Mr. Lacatelle? Okay, moving forward. We are now up to, I think I've done all the committees, correct? Yes. Okay, we're up to the superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening again, everyone. The majority of my report is going to be the school improvement plans from our principals. They've done an amazing job. They're a cohesive team, and just sort of so you know that they're late this year, I think primarily because the bulk of their work was around reopening and the formulation of the 3 models. So some of the things that they're going to be reporting, many of the things to most of the things that they're sort of outlining for you and laying out for you have already started or are in progress. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then we also have a report from our content coordinator of social and emotional learning, who's also just been so valuable to us. And she will be reporting out on a survey that we did with our students, just to get a sense of how they're doing right now in their social and emotional learning well-being. But prior to that, I just want to give you a couple of updates. One is about, I think some of you are hearing something about pool testing. So pool testing was proposed to us by the state, and it's basically a COVID-19 surveillance system. So it's what it does is it tests it would test all students and staff once a week. And it's done in what's called a pool, which means it's done in groups. I'm not sure exactly how those groups are formed. I would assume that they would be done in terms of a class. One of the things though, so the amount of resources that it would take for us to participate is pretty extensive. And I think all the districts in Berkshire County, or many of them, have sort of come to the conclusion that given one nurse in some of our larger schools, that's a pretty heavy lift. So basically what we're doing, or what I'm doing, is participating with some of the other superintendents and some of the other districts as part of the superintendent's roundtable. And we are currently exploring the idea of pooling our resources and doing it more on a countywide level as opposed to doing it on a district level, which would mean there would be dedicated staff specifically for that purpose, but it wouldn't necessarily be our nursing staff. It would in some ways involve our nursing staff, I suppose, but we're really trying to minimize the impact of the additional workload on them right now, particularly since our nurses have just sort of beginning to roll out the Binex now. So I am actively involved in that program, but right now, like I said, it's more, we're doing it in more of we're trying to approach it more of a regional way so we can share resources. And the other thing I just wanted to report out briefly is the work that our K-2 task force is doing. They've done an outstanding job. It's made up, our K-2 task force, it has finished the bulk of their work. It was made up of teachers, service providers, all of educators right now that service our K-2 students. And the intent was to see what our capacity was to bring them back for 4 days a week, all students. Our plan right now is principals really want an opportunity, because not all teachers were involved in the task force, to really present our findings to their K-2 staff. So once that happens, following that, the elementary principals will be presenting the study and our findings to the Safety and Wellness Subcommittee. And then I'm anticipating that they will also be presenting their findings to the school committee at the February 11th school committee date. So again, like I said, they have, what is feasible with the resources that we have. They identified what resources they think we need, and then they looked at concerns that they would have even with an additional resource, and kind of problem solved all those different things. And there are a couple things that we're still wrapping up. We're looking at a potential survey for our K-2 parents as well as part of that process. So that's really all I have right now. Again, I'm really proud of the work that our administrative team has done. I think you'll get a good sense of the fact that even though, so much has really evolved around the pandemic, I think that we are also continuing the work of educating our students given the conditions, and there's a lot going on right now, and I mean that in a good way. When I say a lot going on, it's a lot of work that's sort of building on some of the work we've already done. So some of the training and professional development that we've already had, now it's time to really sustain it, maintain it, and apply it in a multitude of different ways. One of those, of course, is in our different learning models. So I think you'll see that is happening, and that we're really trying to maximize our resources in terms of our student learning. Does anybody have questions for me? Okay, so I am going to turn it over to our elementary principals, but first I'm going to share. I just need to first share PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen. And all right. So this is slide 1, school improvement plans. Our elementary principals really work together. And so they're going to be presenting to you as a team.
Hi, this is Mary Kay from Beckett, Washington. I get to start it. Leslie, could you go back to slide 2, please?
Yes, why is it doing that?
Nope, farther back.
I really
We're
don't.
on slide 5. We should be.
I know I am. I don't know why it's doing this. Hold on.
It's on an automatic timer, so it's playing through it.
I know. I don't. All right.
It's all right now.
It's all right now.
Yeah.
It had a mind of its own for a minute there.
So as elementary principals, we got together and decided on 4 different goal areas that we wanted to focus on. The first being student achievement. So, like every year, we want our students to meet or exceed proficiency targets. So we're working towards that. This year, especially with in-person, remote, and hybrid learning models in place, we are determined that they will all get access to appropriate instruction and essential content. So we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to do that. The first thing we'll focus on is ongoing analysis of all of our data. We are using data to inform all of our learning strategies, teaching strategies. We're doing targeted teaching. We have monthly or even sometimes bi-monthly meetings that include a whole team where we analyze assessment data. And from there, and if you have access to the PowerPoint, you can click on the link there and you'll see one of our forms for data gathering. But through this data gathering, we create flexible strategy grouping that can include a whole class, a small group, individual students. We use our Title I tutors and our interventionists and to address those challenge areas. We also, for the students who are more at risk, do more frequent progress monitoring and data analysis. So we stay on top of them and pivot as we need to. Our instructional supports, which let me just take a minute to thank all of you for being supportive of us and offering so many supports. We are trying to use them most efficiently so that we promote the most effective teaching and learning. Our assignments for our interventionists, our Title I tutors, our behavior interventionists, our coach, are based on classroom needs at a specific time. That means they may be flexible. They may change based on the data analysis. So that happens all the time. We have training available always for the staff we're asking to use the different intervention programs. And during hybrid and remote learning models, as you know, we've named specific students who meet a certain criteria who attend school 4 days a week. That also has been a fluid group. We've continued to add students to that group as we've seen the need. Our instructional coach happens at all 3 elementary schools. We're continuing that model. We're collaborating with teachers and the coach, Patty Roby, to design targeted student outcomes. Patty supports us at Kittredge and Beckett. Kathy and I are also coaches as well, so we work. We coach small groups or do one-on-one that we sometimes suggest specific coaching cycles. And again, data analysis is used to inform all of our coaching decisions. This was especially important this year, obviously, to determine that all students will have full and equitable access to the curriculum in whatever model we are. We are committed to having students with working devices and access to Wi-Fi. And I have to now give a shout out to Joe Sturgis and his team. They have been wonderful in making this happen and stepping in when there were problems. We have offered individual support and group training as needed. We've done twice this year Zoom to help families know how to navigate through online learning. We've done some small group training and we even do individual support. We also are offering ongoing PD for teachers. because this is a whole new area for everyone. There are all these wonderful new apps, new approaches, new procedures, but teachers need some support. Bring that. EL is still and should be a big factor in our success. We are continuing to integrate it throughout all of our classroom instruction. Our administrators are monitoring it in our individual buildings. We are using the UDL progression rubric to move educators along. All of our educators are somewhere along the rubric, and we don't want them to stall. So we're giving them the support they need to move on. We're also offering additional PD as they needed. Since we've built so much of our own capacity within UDL, we have many staff members who are able to run trainings or mentor staff members who aren't as far along on the progression rubric. And I will turn it over to Annie.
Hi, Annie Pecor, principal of Craneville Elementary School. I'm going to give a brief overview of our second goal, which is social emotional learning. Basically to develop and integrate the research-based components of social emotional learning to ensure a safe and supportive school. So the first focus area under social emotional learning is responsive classroom, which is engagement and evidence-based approach to teaching, and it focuses on engaging academics, building a positive classroom community, effective management of that positive classroom community, and then developmental awareness based on a student's age and obviously then grade level. We had teachers trained in responsive classroom. So I had a teacher trained, as did Mary Kay and Kathy, and we have relied on those teachers to provide our staff professional development and responsive classroom. And I would really encourage you to click on the link in this slide because you will see some very specific things that we have integrated. One of the main parts of responsive classroom that we have implemented is the morning meeting, which really focuses on setting the tone for a productive day of learning and building that cohesive classroom environment. One of the parts that I also really appreciate about responsive classroom is ensuring that the social emotional is merged with the academic. So they're not happening as separate pieces to a child's day, but they're merged to really look at the whole child. So for example, you might start your morning meeting with a greeting, and it would focus on eye contact, greeting your peers, but it really also, to pull in that academic piece, focuses on speaking and listening and all of those skills that really do allow our learners to grow. So it's something that I'm very excited about, and I know that Kathy and Mary Kay are as well, and Debbie will, I believe, will also speak to it. We also are continuing with our positive behavioral interventions and supports, also known as PBIS. We are in a sustaining phase. It looks a little bit different this year, obviously, as we move through models of learning. But basically, we all have our core values, and we're working to consistently support those values in our classrooms and our buildings and our parent communications. And we work to model and provide examples of each value. I know our teachers, choose literature thoughtfully to support our values, and we look to examine our current interventions to adjust and improve how we meet the needs of our students based on their unique situations. We also all have a social emotional learning committee that we meet probably quarterly, monthly, depending, and we focus on the social emotional competencies, which you can see on the slide are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And we really have some teacher leaders and staff that have really worked to make decisions to meet the needs of our students and how we can also support staff. We have engaged in social emotional learning book studies with our staff to really open up discussions and brainstorm ideas on how we can support our school communities as a whole. Lisa Herland is going to speak about this in her presentation at the end of the evening, but we all did a panorama survey in grades 3 through 5, which really allowed us to look and analyze and interpret data based on student responses. And we were able to identify students in need of additional support. So our staff in our elementary schools were able to reach out to specific students who were stating that they might need a little extra support. And that was especially important, you know, in these pandemic times. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to Kathy Buckley, who's doing equity and.
Thank you for stalling while I was trying to unmute. So I will briefly describe to you our goals for equity and diversity. To establish pedagogical classroom practices that respond to the diverse makeup of our classrooms. This goal really does encompass so much more than what it looks like at first value. One of the ways we had to broaden our thinking around equity and diversity this year in light of COVID and the different learning models and teaching models that we've had is making sure that whatever plan we have, all students have equitable access to it. And that includes the technology piece. So ensuring that students and families have equal access to technology, as well as the training necessary to navigate the digital tools. I will once again bring up our tech department. They have been outstanding. If we need something, we've got it. If a cord breaks and we call them, they have one there before the end of the day. Anything we have needed to provide for our families and for our teachers, they have been available pretty much 24/7 to make sure that it happened. We started with a technology survey to families to see what in fact they did need in order for their children to access the learning model. Every K through 5 student has been provided a Chromebook, and pre-K students have iPads as well. If a family is in need of a hotspot to access internet, we make sure that happens too. And just as a little aside, Chromebooks and hotspots are incredibly hot commodities, and I'm not sure what Joe had to do to get them all, but he did a fabulous job. We also include ongoing Google Classroom training for our parents and caregivers. We did a training at the beginning of the year as administrators, and we had family members, parents, etc., join in, and that's ongoing. We all field calls daily. My child can't get in. What can I do to help? We had a teacher actually was upside down in her picture today, so she couldn't quite figure out how to write herself. So we jumped in there and figured it out. But I think this is a new aspect to equity and diversity that we perhaps may not have thought about in the past.
Turn her computer upside down?
That was one thing we tried, but that was a little awkward, Rich. So we very carefully ensure that the curriculum materials that we purchase and that we expose our children to are reflective of global equity and diversity. As a part of the Equity and Diversity Curriculum Committee, we actually have a tool that I'm not going to be able to pull it up right now. I'm sorry, it's past my bedtime, but it is something that we have been trying out as a subcommittee on the curriculum committee of the Equity and Diversity to sort of look carefully and analyze the materials that we do have to be sure that they are culturally diverse and reflective of global equity and diversity. We've done a really nice job, I believe, of purchasing diverse books and curriculum materials. If you do have access to this PowerPoint and you click on photo, I took a picture of books that are displayed in our lobby at Kittredge, and all the other schools will have access to these books as well. Patty Roby, our coach, has helped build our library with diverse books and curriculum materials. But one of our goals of the curriculum committee was to be sure that anyone who walked into our schools felt welcome. So the display was set up in the lobby to make sure that would happen. We continually examine our existing resources, and we vet any curriculum adoption based on the equity and diversity. And it's Nathan.
Good evening. I'm Nathan Liu, assistant principal at Craneville. And our final elementary goal this year is really focusing on health and safety. I think it's goes without saying, just that the pandemic has caused us and forced us to add a goal around health, and you'll see that in our first slide. And I think that one important part of this was how we did so much planning and front loading in the summertime. So each of the schools, all 5 schools, had a task force and safety committee that met throughout the summer to ensure a safe opening back in October. And I think this first the focus area here to promote behaviors that reduce COVID-19 spread, maintaining safe and healthy environments and operations, kind of an ongoing goal that we've been working on even as recent as today, updating our winter protocols as we prepare to go back, So this has been, I think that all schools are proud of the work their task force have done and have made the job as administrators that much easier, as we had a really we had input from all parties, from our custodians to our support staff to teachers. Everyone had a voice in making sure our schools were ready to open. So I think this one goes without saying, just monitor COVID protocols, keeping our buildings safe. And even the middle one here, keep all staff up to date on latest COVID protocols and procedures happening ongoing, and reviewing those regularly. And then our, Leslie had mentioned most recently, the last month, our feasibility studies have been looking at bringing all K-2 students back. So even looking at classroom spacing, how we can adequately bring those students back has been our most recent goal. So this is just an ongoing goal we're working on throughout this pandemic. So, and then safety, this is my 3rd year at Craneville. This is something that's been new and changing every year a little bit, but we are still working with the SEPC group. That's our monthly meetings with the School Emergency Planning Committee. So it's all the town's police and fire, EMS, the state police. And that's just to go through and update our drills to make sure we have all of our safety protocols done. So that has changed through COVID as well. At Craneville, we've had the state police has done a presentation for us at a faculty meeting, just outlining some of the lockdown procedures and drills that would take place during the pandemic. We have had our ongoing fire drills, just making sure that we're up to date with everything. Last year, all the schools worked with, I believe it was BMC or some health organization for Stop the Bleed. We were all trained in that last year. So evacuation, reunification. We had our safety meeting last Thursday. We talked about doing some of those things, perhaps in the spring when the weather is nicer and we have more students in the building. So again, this has been ongoing. It's great collaboration between all the towns and those safety departments helping the schools. So that's health and safety in a nutshell.
Does anyone have questions for our elementary admin team? Okay, so Nessicus Middle School, Mrs. White, Mr. Vosberg, and Mr. Campbell. I'm gonna hold on, wait a minute. Give me a minute.
I have it up if you want me to share it, Leslie.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Perfect. Yep.
Oh, sure, I say that, but where's there it is. All right. So Neskis also had similar goals because they're based on the district-wide plan. Oh, that's not what I wanted. 100%. So we're going to start with John Vosberg. He's the assistant principal of teaching and learning, and most of his job revolves around the student achievement piece. So he's going to take this one.
Hello, everybody. I actually do have a face. Greg, I can't turn my video on. All right, I'll just continue. So So our first goal obviously revolves around student achievement. And I just want to start off by saying that, while of course we are prioritizing, the health and safety of our students, eye off the ball regarding student achievement. That is, why we're here, and clearly our first focus area. We know that we have work to do to continue to rebound out of status, and we want to make sure that we're on the right path to continue down making our improvements. Can you go to the next slide, please? So again, obviously this year has not been easy for anybody. But I must say that both our faculty and students have worked very hard to navigate whatever situation we find ourselves in. This summer, we front-loaded professional development on Google Classroom as the learning platform for all of our students. We modified schedules, given both learning environments, whether we're in hybrid or remote. And we even tweaked those schedules along the way as we saw fit, in particular in response to the time on learning requirement the department put out in December. So again, our students and our faculty just took the challenge and kind of went with it, knowing that this is what we needed to get done. We developed all kinds of protocols to make sure that the kids stayed safe and that learning was the optimum atmosphere. We developed protocols for things like entering the building, transitioning to and from lunch, how we work at lunch and recess, transitioning to and from PE. We implemented the use of eHall Pass, which to me is one of the best inventions ever, and hopefully something that we will maintain for a long time, as it really does a nice job to help with contact tracing, but also knowing where students are throughout the building, and it's been a great tool. We also worked obviously on dismissal routines and developed all kinds of other safety precautions to keep our kids safe. We acquired a lot of resources to support in the remote learning environment, obviously Zoom subscriptions. We purchased teacher college reading and writing program virtual units to support our ELA teachers delivering the units of study. We purchased a science subscription of Kepler Science and Pear Deck, which I believe is district-wide, that also included some professional development that many, if not most of our teachers are using. As was mentioned earlier, we supplied hotspots to students with internet issues, Chromebooks for all students, document cameras for teachers, just to name a few. I work with nearly every teacher in the building. I meet weekly with grade level teams and follow up with weekly meetings with individual teachers to address more specific concerns and needs that they have. Next slide. Thank you. So as I said, I meet weekly with grade level teams. We review and modify lesson plans and assessments. And given that either remote or the hybrid environment is new to everyone, no one can say that they've done this before, I don't think. And no one can really say that they have, research-based techniques. Dialogue is more of a back and forth, bouncing ideas off of each other, making necessary adjustments. A lot of times teachers just need a reassurance that what they're doing is the right thing to do, and running ideas by people. We definitely tweaked a lot of things along the way. No one claims to know everything, and we've definitely made adjustments as needed. I've observed, I can't tell you how many lessons since September, but I do that to get a firm understanding of what is actually happening in our Zoom lessons, in our hybrid lessons. I give immediate input, encouragement, and feedback, as needed. Next slide. So right away, we noticed, that a lot of our students were struggling with asynchronous learning. And we saw clearly that we certainly needed to do something about that. We put into a plan utilizing our Title I tutors and also some other interventionists. And we created a schedule to provide students on their asynchronous day on-time support via Zoom. And basically what happens is students are scheduled to call in to a Zoom at a particular time on a particular day where they will receive help in all 4 content areas. Our Title I and intervention teachers, I say this to them every week when we meet, have been great because we've adjusted that schedule many times to make it fit and to optimize the time that they have, which is limited, to support these kids. And we've set up a schedule in both, for the hybrid environment and the remote environment to make sure that whatever we're in, these kids are going to get help when they're home. We identify these students through continuous data analysis. We do this almost weekly, it feels like, maybe even more, so that we're assured that no kids are going to slip through the cracks. And we want to make sure that if we have a student that it does not have some kind of support, that we find a place where they can get some help. Collaborative inquiry protocol, as I just said, we use it not just for benchmark data, but quarterly grades, basically anything that PowerSchool can provide us. We jump at attendance, not so much behavior because that's really a non-issue this year. But so we definitely do a lot of data analysis, again, to make sure that we're not losing any kids along the way.
And the next one is social and emotional learning. Gary Campbell does a lot of this work, so I'm going to have him take this portion.
Hello, everybody. I was just going to be the person without the video. Greg, if you could put on the video, but obviously John didn't have the video either. I thought it was a rookie thing for me, being the newbie here on the staff, but I hope everybody's doing well. Obviously, my piece here with social emotional learning, right up my alleyway. But we want to create that positive, supportive climate in Escas Middle School. And so we have a couple things for that. The first one, next slide, is our PBIS, a continuum from the elementary, in which the elementary principals talked about. But we have a leadership team at Escas, teacher-led, that work together. About a half dozen or so teachers and administration. I'm involved in that. They've been trained. They report out at our staff meetings. We're setting a common purpose and approach for discipline here we go, a little start video. Escas. Hello, everybody. But we're starting that. We want to set a clear set of positive expectations and behaviors for our kids, and also teaching expected behaviors in school and class wide. We want to encourage that all the way through. Like I said, we got a really energetic crew at Escas. I'm really proud to be a part of that. So we use data from Swiss, from our discipline software to help us with this and hit the areas that obviously need be, whether it's disrespect, whether it's things such as that, in which we can then really work on together as a group to attack. So it's an ongoing thing. We're really focusing on respect. And as we come back, obviously we're going to focus on safety coming back with that too. Next slide. The responsive classrooms, again, teacher-led things, and really here in a nutshell, we just believe that integrating social and emotional skills are going to create an environment where, you know, students do their best learning. And so we really want to have a consistent environment, starting off with classroom meetings, starting off a positive part of the day. The kids know what is coming at them. You know, and morning announcements, going to have that. I want to make a connection with that so that they connect with Nescus, they connect with Central Berkshire, they connect with what's going on around them. And I want them to be a part of it too. Next year when we get back, or hopefully at the end of this year, we get back, we have a great situation with NTV where the kids are a part of that. So I think there's a lot of great things happening in which with our responsive classroom piece there. And then finally, restorative circles and going through that. I've been really, again, just starting off in January, but World of Difference, we got kids involved in that. We developed spirit packs. We sent home, Mr. Vosberg and I drove to all parts of the district to bring T-shirts, to bring learning material, to bring everything to these kids. And most came and picked them up, but the kids were actually involved in that. The sayings, if you have any kids at Nescus and you get the sayings on the backs of the T-shirts, those were developed from the kids. So we really want to make sure that we make that connected and those kids feel connected and respected in our school. And that's really up my alley. I'm fired up about it, but I'm really lucky to have a staff there that is fired up about this. So we're moving forward with this. Excited, ready to roll, ready to get back to school.
Thanks, Gary. The next part is equity and diversity. So basically, we are looking at what our practices are in the district, but also specifically to Nescus, and looking at just supporting equitable educational practices, but also disrupting those inequitable systems and structures as well. We are doing that with the World of Difference. We've been involved for a couple of years now. It's through the Anti-Defamation League. We have trained mentors, and we use them to provide some education and activities for the other kids. As Gary mentioned, they were helpful with the spirit bags. They helped with the T-shirts. My favorite saying was the 8th grade, which was tough times don't last, but tough people do. And I think that's really appropriate for the times we're in. That was the kids helping with that. They also did a walk and talk with the 6th grade early in the year when we came back to hybrid in October. And that was really well received by both the 6th graders and the older kids. Really loved connecting with them that way. They also identified staff in the building that maybe don't hear thank yous enough. They gave gifts with notes to the custodians, cafeteria workers, the secretaries. So, you know, they really are looking at how to make a difference in the world of Nescus to start with. So, and we will be implementing a spring activity as well. It just has not been identified yet, but the kids identify those. The SPIRIT program stands for Student Problem Identification and Resolution of Issues Together. In the spring of 2019, the Department of Justice came up from Florida. They trained people in Berkshire County at Nescus, and we had other schools there as well as Central Berkshire schools. We were the first school to implement it in this area, and we have a teacher facilitator. It's Emma Cornwall. She's an English teacher in 6th grade who leads that work. Last year, the Department of Justice asked us for our schedule of meetings, and they actually surprised us last February by flying up and joining us for a meeting. So it was really kind of exciting. They were excited to get us involved, and they will start working on that as we come back to hybrid as well. It really looks at protected classes, but I think this year that it's just a wider range because we are worried about people's mental health in all areas and equity around resources for families. We are also involved in the restorative circles. We're going to be implementing that at Nescus as well. Jared Shannon received training from the International Institute of Restorative Practices, and we purchased Circle Forward books. Those were recommended by the Multicultural Bridge, and that will guide our work. And this spring, we are working with Jared Shannon and a couple other people to create an implementation plan. We received a $33,000 grant to help us with this work. So I'm kind of excited that we got that grant, and it will help us to provide resources, get stipends for teachers to get trainings, pay for trainings. It's going to be really great, and also work pay for Multicultural Bridge to continue their work with us. We're also looking at curriculum reviews, and we're reviewing the literature resources. We want to purchase books that represent diverse authors and characters, looking at vetting any new materials to see if there's any bias in them, and then also getting student input for purchasing books for the library to make sure that they represent the groups that we have in our school. We have a health and safety goal as well, and it really is taken a new twist this year because of COVID. And we're really focusing on reducing the exposure and transmission of COVID within the schools, adhering to all of the COVID health and safety procedures, and also our continued participation in the school safety emergency planning. So the COVID health and safety procedures, you've heard a lot about that already through, what we were talking about earlier with how we planned protocols and procedures. Another piece of this was communicating that out both to families and to staffs, because the staff needed to understand how things were working. We did explicit instruction with the students as they're coming back on Monday. Mr. Campbell has already put things out to teachers. He's planning on going into every PE class, reviewing all those expectations and giving explicit instruction on our expectations. So, a lot goes into it. We also develop and implement those procedures as new information becomes available. And an example of that is the Binax Now implementation. I added that after we knew it was available back in September, October, when we were talking about our school improvement plans. We didn't even know that was going to be a thing. So we do have to keep really current on all of the new information that comes out. We also participate in the School Emergency Planning Council. We've been doing that for years. I would say that we really are an exemplary group working with that, with the school emergency groups around us. At Nessicus, the assistant principal attends the monthly meetings, brings that information back to the school. It is such a collaborative group, and it changes year to year based on what they have in mind for us, also what is going on in the schools. One of the things that has come out of this strong collaboration with our local emergency planning and our emergency management system is we were recently invited on Tuesday, actually, to be part of a question and answer group with the 3 finalists for the Dalton Police Chief position. So, I went to that, and I really think that working together with them, they value our input and we value theirs. One of the candidates was describing a group that he was really impressed with, and it was a school that was starting to do reunification plans. So if we ever had to get kids off our campuses and reunify them with their families, and he was saying what, kind of cutting edge they were doing this. And I couldn't resist by very proudly telling them that we not only have written our plans, we 2 years ago actually ran drills on our reunification. So, I think that shows that this was a guy from New York that was thinking that was so cutting edge. And we're like, yeah, we've done that. We're like pretty confident that we can do that. So, but that's the work that we do with that group. And, they've been really valuable with keeping our schools safe. And we continue monthly meetings with them and, develop whatever practices we need to with that group.
Does anyone have questions for our Nessicus administrative team? And as you can see, there's a lot going on right now. Thank you. And Mr. Rob and Mr. Messina, do you want me to share I can share mine here. Just one sec. I'm gonna pull it up.
That sounds good. Hello, everybody. While she's getting that together, you're going to find a lot of familiar and common trends with our school improvement plan as compared to the middle school and the elementary school. So I'll try to speak specifically to just some things that maybe you haven't heard about this evening. I'm noticing the time is approaching 9:30 and we still have Lisa Herland, our social emotional coordinator, to present to you. So I don't want to prolong things too much for you folks. It's been a long night. So if we can go to the first slide. Just like with all of the other schools, has to do with student achievement. And our goal is very much the same as the rest of the schools. I did want to make mention in this particular goal of the work that we have to do to reopen and, quite frankly, recover from last spring due to COVID. COVID is going to be a common theme throughout our school improvement plan for sure. Next slide, please. Everything this year very much stems from the creation of our remote and hybrid learning models. As it's been explained before, the state mandated all schools to create both types of models in preparation for this school year, and we've in fact used both models. When we formed what we called the Wacona Reopening Task Force, we chose to draw from a very diverse cross-section of staff members, teachers and administrators in this particular group. And this group started meeting right from the jump in mid-July. We would meet twice a week, and we did so straight through July and all of August, right up to the start of the school year before we went into the teacher professional development sessions. We chose to break up into two working groups because of all of the moving parts at the high school. So we had an operations working group headed up by Steve Messina and assisted by Jared Shannon. And we had a teaching and learning working group headed up by myself and assisted by our instructional coach, Sean Therian. So what would happen is that the four of us would meet on Monday. And then what we would do is we would kind of set the agenda for the week of meetings. We would do a full group meeting on Tuesday, and then we would break off into our working groups on Wednesdays. And that's how we were able to develop all the different protocols and procedures for both remote and hybrid learning at Wacona. I do want to highlight one thing when it comes to hybrid learning. We are not able to cohort students in the way in which the elementary and middle schools are because of all the different courses that we have. So we had to be extra careful, and what we ended up doing was doing some significant modifications to our schedule to reduce the amount of transition time during the day, which we were able to cut almost in half. Next slide, please. We are in our second year of instructional coaching. Sean Therian, who is a part-time science teacher, our science coordinator, is also our instructional coach at Wacona. But even though we're in our second year, this year it has changed fundamentally, and it's been a true game changer for us. It's a game changer in the fact that Sean is more than highly qualified for the job, but also for the fact that this particular work has really helped to mitigate a lot of the instructional issues that we've run into related to COVID. So what happens is our instructional coach meets with a small group of teachers once per week. Those groups are about 3 to 5 teachers per group. It is a cross section. One of the things that we're trying to do is, high schools can become very much entrenched in the departmental model, which we do have departments, but sometimes there's kind of a silo effect that can occur in departments. And over the last few years, we've been trying to break that down a little bit and get more cross-curricular work done between, say, a Spanish teacher and a biology teacher, and really talking about teaching and learning. This particular approach has helped us to do that. So those small group coaching sessions are cross-curricular. They are not department specific. We basically pulled the time out of the schedule from our teacher directed learning time, DLT duties. We do survey the teachers periodically to get feedback on their instructional coaching experience. What basically happens, although Sean and I are set to meet weekly, we actually meet far more than just once a week. He is able to keep me apprised of some of the patterns and trends and concerns that the teachers may have that we can then address in an administrative way or possibly through building-based professional development. Next slide, please. Just like the rest of the district, we're engaged in district benchmark assessments and data analysis through Edulastics. This is ongoing as it has been in previous years. When we engage in our collaborative inquiry protocols, we do so at the departmental level. And then myself, Sean Therian, and our math coordinator, Jeff Pike, and our English coordinator, Meg Donovan, then process the data together after it's been processed at the departmental level. Next slide, please. One of the another key element going into this year is Wacona for the first time qualified for Title I services. So many thanks to Leslie on this front, we were able to obtain a Title I tutor at Wacona. We targeted 9th grade only, particularly ELA and math classes. We have a fantastic Title I tutor. She's been a real game changer for us in many different fronts. So she supports targeted 9th grade ELA and math classes, but also does one-to-one and small group academic intervention work. During remote learning, it takes place in the afternoon, and during hybrid learning, it takes place periodically throughout the day during students' asynchronous at-home days. And last year, we started our foray into what is called instructional rounds. It was something that we were very excited about and very proud of. We had conducted 2 sets of rounds where we identify a problem of practice, and then all of our teachers go into each other's classrooms and observe each other trying to problem solve that problem of practice in live time. The problem that we ran into is that we conducted our second set of rounds in early March, and then COVID hit. So we never had a chance to process our findings. So we are exploring the possibility of revitalizing our instructional rounds process later on this school year. A lot of that's going to depend on what we can and can't do in terms of moving around the building and so on and so forth. But we have a nice relationship with the trainer that we met through Harvard. And we're going to be reconnecting with her, revitalizing our instructional rounds design team, and trying to get back to work where we left off a year ago. Our social emotional learning goal is pretty much centered on everything else that everybody else is working on as well. We're obviously trying to, especially during this day and age of COVID, trying to build social and emotional skills within our students because it has been a struggle for them through last spring, this summer, and through this school year. So one of the things that every school is engaged in is some level of PBIS work. Wacona's actually started a couple of years ago when we did a complete overhaul of our core values. We did a ton of work on that, a lot of student involvement, staff involvement. It was a great process. But then the next step was to start making it mean something and really making it work. On top of that, we've done a lot of work this year because of the situation we're in. We've pulled a lot of data from the student surveys that we did this past fall, and Lisa Herland, who you'll hear from later, was key in helping us set us up with that. That data is still, the survey data is still giving us information that helps inform how best we can meet the needs of the students, but in particular, how to meet the needs of individual students. And that's where Steve Messina, who you'll hear from in a minute, he runs a student support team that meets weekly to analyze that data, among other things, and start strategizing appropriate support. So we actually have a spreadsheet that we call an outcome plan, student outcome plan, and it has students listed. They're tiered 1, 2, and 3, 3 being most at risk. And someone, an individual, a staff member, is attached to that student, and they're responsible for documenting the work that they're going to do to try to help that student moving forward. All right, Mr. Messina. No, this is me. Sorry, I'm a little premature on this one. No, you are, yeah, Mr. Messina, go ahead.
I think we skipped over a slide there.
We can go back to it after.
Okay. Restorative circles, you've heard about this a little bit. First of all, hello, everyone. I hope everyone's well. Restorative circles is one of our focuses this year, has been last year. We plan to implement these to focus more on targeted situations, more specific behaviors. We see this as part of under the umbrella of restorative practices, restorative justice. So the circles are something that we're looking at to more or less target specific behaviors. Jared Shannon has been trained by the International Institute of Restorative Practices and will continue to be trained as opportunities present themselves. Jared's planning on instituting restorative circles with targeted students this spring. This was put in motion actually last year, and we were all set to hold these circles with certain students in this past spring. Obviously, that was interrupted, but we are prepared to move forward on that in this coming spring. The logistics of that will have to be worked out. We have to be aware of all of the COVID issues and now time on learning. So we're aware of all those things that tend to disrupt this process, but we are determined to make this happen. The goals of some of these circles are to educate the students in certain components, to mandate counseling, to see the kids take responsibility for their issues. And in the end, the goal is to reduce disciplinary issues. And we're confident that we can do that.
Leslie, do you mind going back one slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just one quick comment about some of the social emotional work that we are doing. Once again, some targeted work with specific students. This is very much stemming from things that we've learned in the way in which the COVID situation and the way in which we're having to go about school is affecting the students. Lisa Herland was able to hook us up with a training with a trainer who has authored some curriculum called School Connect, which we purchased. Jared and also our school adjustment counselor, Katie Whitsom, are going to run point on doing some of this work with particular students. But ultimately, down the road, the idea behind this curriculum is that it should be implemented in some way school-wide. So that's going to be the next step after we start doing kind of this tier 2 work with certain students. Okay, we can go to health and safety. Messina.
Yes, as far as safety is concerned, you've heard a lot about the School Emergency Planning Committee, the SCP-EPC, which meets monthly. I, along with the other administration throughout the district, will meet monthly with all of the local law enforcement, emergency personnel. We've been doing this for a few years. We have a really great relationship with all of these people. We really work well together, and we do collaborate on everything, all the lockdowns, the drills that we've engaged in, even the relocation, unification drills, which are so important. One of the things that we are planning on doing, since we are moving into a new building, is really targeting some aggressive planning in the spring, late spring, and even during the summer, so that we come back next fall, we have a solid plan for even fire drills. Everything's going to look different once we walk into that new building, fire drills, lockdowns, any kind of evacuation. So we understand that. Mass State Police, Dalton Police understands that. So we will work together to make sure that that is a smooth transition come next fall.
As far as health goes, everything's obviously revolving around COVID, and we have the same exact procedures as the elementary and the middle school. We're certainly happy to have the Binax Now testing, which will now be put to work starting Monday. I do want to make a comment about contact tracing. Once again, the high school with moving parts, we had to put together a pretty intricate contact tracing system. There's basically a team of people that engage in contact tracing when the need arises. So it's myself, Steve Messina, Jared Shannon, our school nurse, Joan Roy, and our front office administrative assistant, Lisa Farley. When we get word that there's a COVID positive student, we get right to work in contact tracing, and we can get it done very, very quickly so that we can move on and try to mitigate things as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. Our final goal centers on equity and diversity, as with all the rest of the schools. And obviously, we want to be working on making our schools welcoming and inclusive to all students. We spent many, many years working on that when it comes to being more inclusive with students with disabilities, we have a lot of things in place right now. I would argue that our high school stands out among many high schools when it comes to that. But we still have plenty of work to do in other realms, particularly when it comes to ethnicity and race. We are a school with 93% of our population is white, and that fact is not lost on us. So we have a little bit of work to do there. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're trying to do to make things more equitable, particularly in the age of COVID, is to try to give students the technology that they need in order to keep up with their classes. We are very thankful that we're in year 3 of a Chromebook, one-to-one Chromebook initiative. So we did not have to go through the process of trying to get Chromebooks into students' hands because they already had them. We were very excited about that, at least going into this year. But I want to give a big shout out to our district tech coordinator, director, Joe Sturgis, who has done a remarkable job on making sure that those families that need hotspots get them. I will tell you that he literally this summer drove around the entire district, including school choice towns in the surrounding us. And he actually knows right down to the street which area gets AT&T versus Verizon service. So when a student's family contacts us and says, we need a hotspot, and we ask them, where exactly do you live? And then Joe can actually determine whether or not it's an AT&T or Verizon hotspot. And I think that extra mile that Joe went has made a big deal, made a big difference for us as far as reaching our students remotely.
Okay, the restorative justice, we did talk a little bit about this with regards to restorative circles. This is a much broader view of this. Our focus is to train restorative justice practices for the entire staff. Jared Shane, again, is leading this effort, has been trained. We are creating the formation of a restorative justice advisory committee, and the plan is to train the staff and implement this. We look at this as a 3-year plan. We want to get to the point where teachers can run restorative circles in their own classrooms in real time. It's going to take some time, but we expect this buy-in to be very successful over the next 3 years. Okay, and the last, this is our last slide, peer mentoring. We have a focus of working with the Anti-Defamation League's World of Difference program. We actually started this over a year ago. I've worked with the ADL and the trainers from the ADL. They've actually come and trained our entire staff. We do have a couple teachers that act as advisors for our World of Difference group. We have about 17 students who were trained from the trainers at ADL on how to train other students. Our plan was to implement this past spring. We were going to focus on the freshman class. Again, obviously interrupted. We have already put in motion a plan to do this coming spring. We're looking at a virtual version of this at this point. Since we are back hybrid, we will explore other ways. We do believe it's much more effective to do this in person, but we are working closely with the folks at the ADL to hopefully get this thing rolling and get our peer mentors in front of the kids by the spring.
Does anyone have questions for our high school team? Mr. Robin, Mr. Messina. I know it's a lot, everyone. We right before, so as you can see, I have a pretty amazing team behind me, and I can't say enough how lucky and fortunate I feel and am. We have one more presentation. We are going to hear from Lisa Herland, but I know, Barbara, we have to take a quick vote to extend, I believe.
Yes, I've been watching the clock, and we do need to have a vote to extend past 10 o'clock. And I too just wanted to thank all the administrative team. That was a wonderful presentation, and there's so many wonderful things going on. So thank you. I know how hard you work. Okay, so we need a roll. First, we need a motion to extend the meeting to beyond 10 o'clock.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I don't think there'll be any discussion, so we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bartels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Misty Tomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas,
Yes.
Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori,
Yes.
Mrs. Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
So just again, one of the things that we have really emphasized, and hopefully you saw it in the work we've been doing across K through 12, pre-K through 12 actually, is just making sure that we're in touch with the social and emotional well-being of our students. And we're pretty fortunate to have Lisa Harlan. She's our behavioral interventionist across the district, but she's also our content coordinator for social and emotional learning. So I'm going to turn it right over to Lisa.
Thank you, Leslie. Hi, everybody. I can't put my video on either, which is okay, but and thank you for hanging in with me for the very last presentation. The good news is part of my presentation has been covered through all the social emotional learning content that all the principals shared. So I'll be able to cut that much shorter. So hopefully this won't go much past 10 o'clock. So I've been here in Central Berkshire. This is my second year and I'm very happy to be a part of this amazing team. I really appreciate the dedication and the commitment that this district shows to our students' success, not only academically, but social, emotionally. And as we know, this pandemic has, I'll start my video in just a second. This pandemic has certainly caused a lot of stress and trauma for our students as well as for the adults, and we are committed as a district certainly to recognizing that and addressing that with our students. Just okay. So what I'm going to quickly go over with you is the Panorama Universal Screening Survey that we did with all the students grades 3 through 12 in the district. And then, as you can see, we've talked already about the School Connects, responsive classroom and restorative practices approaches and programs that have been implemented so far to varying degrees within the district in order to support our students' social emotional needs. So the Panorama Universal Screening Tool is the tool that I also facilitate a social emotional learning committee that has representatives of each school in the district. And one of our first tasks was to do some research around looking for universal screening tools that we wanted to use within our school district to really gain an understanding of how our students are doing as a result of our current situation with the pandemic and all the different things that are going on in our current world. And we chose the Back to School and Wellbeing Survey through Panorama, and we chose that for many different reasons. We looked at a lot of different tools, and this screening tool was very simple. We felt it was very easy to understand, grades 3 through 12. The questions were very straightforward and easy, so there wasn't a lot of need to overthink or misinterpret what was being asked. And Panorama is Panorama Education. We are already partnered with through Central Berkshire, so it was easy and great to work with them again. And through Panorama Education, they offer tons of resources and support through the entire process. So we were happy to work with them. So all students grades 3 through 12 took the survey. Parents were informed through principals' weekly newsletters, and there was an opportunity for them to opt their child or children out of taking the survey if they preferred that they not do that. Only 2 people opted out. The surveys were administered over a 2-week period in October. At that time, we were in a hybrid learning model. And Grades 6 through 12 took the surveys either during their social studies time in class or they took it home during asynchronous times, and grades 3 through 5 took those surveys in class with their teachers. This is really, what I'm going to be giving you is just a quick snapshot of the district's data for the Panorama surveys. What we can do with this is you can dig down much deeper, and each school building has access to this, and they can look much deeper at their own data within their buildings. We chose 3 different categories that we wanted to survey for the students to get a sense again of how are they doing coming into the school year this year, and therefore how could we use that data to drive some decisions about how we needed to best support them. The first category was about challenging feelings, and you can see the percentages are broken down for 3 to 5 and then 6 through 12. So students were asked for that one, how often in the past week did they experience certain negative feelings? And those were feelings like feeling angry, feeling frustrated, feeling sad, lonely. The ratings for the challenging feelings is kind of the opposite. So actually the higher number, the less negative feelings. So that's a little bit opposite of what we might think. The second set was on positive feelings. And again, the students were asked within the past week, how often do you experience certain positive feelings? Those being happy, loved, hopeful, safe. I think that was it for those. And again, you can see our measures broken down from 3 through 5 and 6 through 12. And then supportive relationships, those were questions about, those were questions asking students how supported did they feel in school, at home, and with their peers. So it was asking if they felt like in the school building, did they have an adult they could go to if they needed support? Did they have an adult at home that they could go to if they needed support? And do they feel that they have connections with peers in their building as well, or in the building or at home in their life? So, and as you can see, we had some nice scores for that. For grades 6 through 12, we added a couple of extra questions so that we could get a sense of how kids were doing and how they were feeling about the current learning model. Again, at that time it was hybrid, and what their needs were academically. So the 6%, 61% said yes, that they were getting all the help that they needed with their schoolwork at that point. And 41% answered the questions about being satisfied with the amount of time that they were spending with their teachers. So 41% felt that they were quite or extremely satisfied with the amount of time they spent with their teachers. There was also an opportunity for some open response questions on the survey, which really gave us incredible, valuable information that principals and their teams and their school buildings were able to kind of take and run with. So one of the questions was called a raise your hand question. Students were asked if they would like to talk privately with a teacher or counselor or another adult from their school about how they're doing for extra support. In grades 3 through 5, we had 261 students who took the survey, and 90 of those students answered yes, that they would like to speak with somebody. And in grades 6 through 12, there was 703 students who took the survey, and 113 answered yes, which I think is really significant. And I feel like that question alone gave our students an opportunity to have a voice and to be able to express what they needed and to reach out for help in a very safe and confidential way. All schools were given the names of those students, and all school buildings were able to reach out specifically to those students to get a sense of what their needs are, and then from there build in plans if necessary to be able to support them better. So I think that in and of itself with these surveys was a huge win with being able to give our students a voice. And I feel very strongly that some of those, and I had heard from some buildings that some of those students are not students that we necessarily would have known were needing help or would not have reached out for help had they not been directly asked. So two of the things that we learned from these surveys, we learned a ton from these surveys, but two big takeaway points is that Central Berkshire builds really strong relationships with our students. That was a huge thing that stood out. A nice thing about the Panorama surveys is that we, when the students fill out the surveys online, we get back all the data about how they answered, but it also compares our school data to all of the schools in the nation who completed the same surveys. And for Central Berkshire, we came out in the 80th percentile for our strong relationships with our students. So I think that is a huge testament to the staff at Central Berkshire and how hard they work and how much they care about our students and their social emotional well-being. The other thing that came across is really important is that students are feeling anxious, worried, and frustrated, which I don't think anybody is surprised about. But we also scored well with them feeling hopeful and safe, which I think is really important to note as well, and was really encouraging to see those scores. So the next steps with having received all that information from those surveys was disseminating all that data to the schools. All staff in every school has had an overview of their school's data. And from there, as you heard all the principals talk about, they were able to look at that data and then look at their social emotional, my dog's gonna bark right now, all night long, he's not made a peep. And look at their school buildings and their tiered interventions and see where they wanted to alter things, make an adjustments in order to meet those needs. What we know, and especially in this remote and hybrid state that we're in, we really want to be able to strengthen our tier 1 interventions. That's the point where we're able to reach all students and make sure that we are meeting their needs that way. Central Berkshire has already had such a great jumpstart on this because we have the PBIS is in place. We have the second step social emotional learning curriculum that has been in place. We have zones of regulation, which is another social emotional learning curriculum that elementary has been working on with their students. I think pretty much all elementary students could tell you what the zones of regulation is. And now those students are heading into the middle schools. And so the school adjustment counselor there has been able to continue that work. And all of those curriculums focus on building relationships and on building community. I'm going to take 1 second to get my dog to stop barking. I'll be right back. My apologies. All right. With those tier 1 interventions, we can pull from those to look at implementing tier 2 interventions. So if kids are needing more targeted intervention, or if they need some small groups to really focus more on certain social skills, we can then pull with these curriculums and be able to assist them with that. And then of course, from there, you can pull for the tier 3 interventions if kids are needing more individualized one-on-one kinds of supports. We already talked about responsive classroom. This is a great approach that's been around for over 40 years. I love the last quote about SEL is not in competition with academics, but it's a prerequisite for success. And I think that's always the case, but this year more than ever, we really needed to tune into children's mental health and their social emotional needs. So the responsive classroom morning meetings that we will be putting into place was a great place to start because classrooms are already in elementary school doing morning meetings, and adding the responsive classroom approach to that is just another way of strengthening students' sense of belonging, sets a positive tone for the day, and provides them some predictability and structure, which is so important for kids. But I think now more than ever, with all of the changes and what's going on, it provides kids with a sense of safety that they really need. I'm gonna not go into the 4 domains of responsive classroom. I feel like that was gone over well. And then the School Connect. Aaron Robb did a great job of going over that. The only thing I'll add for this is that the School Connect's author gifted to us very kindly. They created an online version of their School Connect curriculum that they created specifically for hybrid and remote learning. And in those modules, they included some skills training specifically around learning from home, as well as resiliency and some emotion regulation, specifically in regards to current events in the pandemic. So that's something that Katie at Wixom and Jared Shannon have access to in high school, and Emily Price at the middle school adjustment counselor has access to that as well. And then restorative practices, again, this is a very exciting initiative to be starting in the high school and in the middle school. I did some restorative practice work in my previous job and found it to be extremely powerful and effective in working with kids. Really shift in the way that we think about behavior and about discipline are the three big shifts in how we think about behavior and how we would address it. And the first shift is thinking about behavior as something that is a failure of the student or a failure of the parents or a failure of the classroom. And we want to shift that thinking with restorative practices to recognizing that misbehavior is actually an opportunity for social emotional learning, that this is an opportunity to teach skills that the student is lagging. The second shift is from disciplinary actions for misbehavior that focuses just on the misbehaving student. Restorative circles brings everyone together who is immediately affected. So it does hold that student accountable, and it's teaching them the effects of their behavior. So we're also focusing on empathy, but it's also providing an opportunity for some repair with the other people that were affected, which is a really valuable learning experience. And the last shift is from the idea that punishment and exclusion is what we should be doing to control misbehavior and to motivate change. I think we've all doesn't tend to change behavior for the long haul. Sometimes it changes it in the immediate moment, but that typically is as far as it goes. Whoops. And that is shifting to the idea that with restorative practices that in order to change behavior, you need to understand the behavior, understand the effects of it on others, and we want to be able to support students together and not to be imposing on them. So as Mr. Robb spoke about, they will be starting with classroom circles, which is, as you can see, there's a common theme with the classroom meetings. So we start with morning meetings with elementary, responsive advisory meetings for middle school, and then in the high school, they will have classroom circles or restorative circles. There's a couple of different names for them. And these can be proactive in the class as well as reactive in response to problems or concerns. So the implementation of restorative practices improves school climate, reduces suspension, and reduces discipline disparities. So this is something that they use in criminal justice system as well. And a lot of schools have taken this on and are finding a lot of success with using that model. Supporting the whole child during COVID, you've heard kind of common themes and common words throughout what all of the principals talked about, as well as myself, that we've really wanted to focus on building and strengthening relationships. We want our students to be heard. We want to create and implement intentional, predictable, and consistent routines and rituals, and have a supportive and responsive learning community so that our students all feel safe and continue to feel hopeful and more connected as they're continuing their school year. A couple of things we'll be doing next is we'll be following up with another panorama survey, the same survey in the spring, and we'll be able to look at that information and see, you know, how our efforts have fared, how our students are doing. Hopefully we'll see some feeling they're learning. And then also we're looking at doing a case review survey for those students when they come back as well, to get a sense of how they're feeling also. And then again, we'll be using that data to drive decisions around continuing to support our students' social emotional needs. So thank you very much. Of course, had a lot of interruptions over here and I apologize. Is there any questions for me?
Lisa, can you do the stop sharing?
Yeah.
That was, I know thank you for hanging in there with us, everyone. It's been a lot of information, but and I'll pause in a minute if anyone has questions for Lisa. One of the things that stood out for us and all of us is that, clearly our students want more teacher time, which is why one of the other reasons why we've changed our model, and we have more student learning time on those asynchronous days. But does anyone have any questions for Lisa? Because this information has been invaluable for us as administrators, teachers, and staff. Okay, so that really concludes. Thank you so much, Lisa. We like I said, that's been invaluable to us. That concludes my superintendent's report. I know it was long, thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Barbara.
Thank you so much, everybody. And Lisa, that was great information. And say hi to your dog for us, please. At this point,
that was going to happen.
At this point, if there are no questions for Leslie, is there any old business? New business?
I do want to mention something. I think our steps during the beginning of the meeting, I think we left out a step to approve the, I'm sorry, it's late. To approve the consent agenda. I think that you might review that. I think something was wrong there.
No, Dick, we did that.
I thought we did.
No, we approved the creation of the consent agenda. We didn't approve what was in the consent agenda, I believe.
I
But you
thought we
can check.
talked about the amended minutes, and then we did we can go back and listen. If I missed it, I apologize.
Yeah, I think there was one vote missing.
I thought that Mr. Peters made the motion and then we did a vote.
Yeah, we did.
I do have a vote roll call for consent agenda on my on my roll call records that we did it. So
Yeah, but yeah, I think when you do, I think you create consent agenda, but then you vote on it. There are two votes really, I believe. I could be wrong.
Okay, perhaps we'll go back and look at that, but I think I did exactly what Russ Dupre said we needed to do. If there was
Okay.
anybody who had anything to say, to take off of the consent agenda, which Bonnie did and Mr. Stewart did, we took that off and then we had a vote for approving the consent agenda as amended.
Okay.
Okay, so is there anything for the remarks for the good of the committee? Again, I thank you all for sticking with us for this length of time and for making the tough decisions that we had to make. I know that we're not going to, we're not going to please everybody, but I think that we can honestly say that we used the information that we had and we made the best decision. And we will continue to look at our Safety and Wellness Committee for making any other changes based on information in our community. So may I have a motion at this point to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You want to stay later? Okay. So we have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Mr. Bartels,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. DeFazio,
Yes.
Ms. DiTomaso,
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas. Mr. Locatell,
Yes.
Mrs. Latazori. Mrs.
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese.
Yes. So the meeting is adjourned at 10:15 p.m. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Good night.
I all.
Good night.